I did want to bring to the board a resolution to read and at least give consideration to in regards to the third grade retention rule or law that was voted on. I'm just going to read this. We'll discuss it later, but let me just read it in its entirety. Hawkins County Board of Education resolution requesting General Assembly to amend Tennessee Code annotated 49-6-3115 to allow school districts to make retention decisions for students. Whereas the role of Hawkins County Board of Education is defined in Board Policy 1.101, which includes striving to provide the best educational opportunities for all children, and whereas during its 2021 first extraordinary session, the Tennessee General Assembly adopted Public Chapter Number 1, now codified as TCA 49-6-3115, which provides in pertinent part that beginning with the 2022-23 school year, a student in third grade shall not be promoted to the next grade level unless the student is determined to be proficient in English language arts based on the student achieving a performance level rating of on track or mastered on the ELA portion of the student's most recent TCAP, Tennessee Comprehensive Assessment Program test. And whereas the Hawkins County Board of Education believes the retention decisions regarding students should be research-based, informed by multiple data sources, considered at the youngest age possible, and include parental input. And whereas the Tennessee State Board of Education's Promotion and Retention Policy 3.300 lists a minimum of factors to be considered when identifying students for retention, including 1, the student's ability to perform at the expectations of the current grade level standards, 2, the results of local assessment, screening, or monitoring tools, 3, state assessments as applicable, 4, the overall academic achievement of the student, 5, the student's likelihood of success with more difficult material if promoted to the next grade, 6, the student's attendance record, and 7, the student's social and emotional maturity. And whereas the Tennessee State Board of Education policy notes that retention shall be considered only when it is in the best interest of the student, and whereas retention may have adverse effects on students, including those with disabilities and at-risk students, and whereas other states that have adopted legislation regarding retention of third grade students have included a provision allowing school districts to promote students not proficient in ELA as measured by standardized tests based on school district data demonstrating an understanding of ELA via alternative knowledge assessments. Now, therefore, be it resolved on this second day of February 2023 that the Hawkins County Board of Education urges the General Assembly to amend Tennessee Code annotated 49-6-3115 to allow school districts to make retention decisions for all students based upon the totality of data, discussion among stakeholders, and the expertise of education professionals regarding the best interest of each student. So that's it in its entirety. I can pass this around. We can discuss it in new business maybe.
Okay.
But speaking personally for me, the intent for me is just to have them reconsider what's happening. You know, I don't know what the answer is. I know it's a hot topic, so I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you. We need some help from certain folks in this state that, how can I tactfully say this, that want to help. They think they're helping us, but sometimes they hinder us. Case in point, there's a resolution before this board that McClure had read to us. And I think we need to consider a vote on this as to whether to send this in to the state legislature. So it's before this board.
I just want to add, I support the resolution. I helped to draft what's there because we do not feel that retention is a state board of education or a state department of education decision. It's not a government decision, it's a local education agency decision in consult with those that are teaching these students and the parents. And this law has taken that away, our ability to meet with and make determinations on a parental level of what's best for these students. We're at risk if this law does not go through, if this law goes through as stated right now, nearly 300 students in the third grade in Hawkins County would not meet that requirement of meeting standards on a non-reading diagnostic test taken one time, and by the way, this is the student's first time taking it in their life, and this is also the group that was kindergarten that we cut off half of their school year 3 years ago.
Could part of the problem be that it's so problematic in public education now because you've got, now help me on the terminology. You've got X amount of material you have to cover in a certain amount of time. And is that called the
state standards?
The state
for
standards.
each grade level.
So here, the state's saying, you got to do this. Teacher, you got to do this. You can't do this, but you got to do this in this amount of time. And then we're going to test your students. And now they're saying, if your students aren't getting it in the amount of time we've told you, we put these restrictions on you of how and when you can teach your kids. To get to a certain point, now they're going to be retained in 3rd grade. What about 4th grade? What about 2nd grade?
This law has ramifications for these students if this were to stay into place. This has ramifications from this year all the way through their junior year of high school. If you consider this, if we have, let's say 250 students that are retained in 3rd grade, 240 some of them by average will turn 18 before their senior year because they're retained. At the age of 18, they can legally walk out of our school system. That's why retention is very, very serious and is typically done at the kindergarten and 1st grade level when reading diagnostic issues are determined. Not waiting until the 3rd grade. There's a shift, there's a critical shift, and the educators in the room will testify to this, that we teach to read through 2nd grade, and then they learn and they read to learn from 3rd grade on. That switch is very, very dramatic and very tough. That's a tough transition. And you've heard me tell you before, but states look at the 3rd grade promotion rates and retention rates when they decide how many prison cells to make within their state. Because that's a very good indicator as to the number of cells, the number of students that will ultimately become unsuccessful later in life. And that's a sad statistic, but you can look that up. I do not hesitate to say that we hold students accountable for their academic gain or lack thereof. But we don't retain beyond the 3rd grade typically unless there's a very, very good reason to do so. Our hands are tied as this law is currently written, and it takes the control out of the parents' hands, out of our hands, and puts it with the state, and that's where we disagree.
I have to ask this question. Has the board member ever got a phone call from a parent that child has been considered for retention? Have you ever had to deal with that parent?
I've been that parent. I mean, my son, we luckily had the option of summer school and got into where he needed to be, but retaining in 1st grade was very much something we were told we were probably going to have to do. And that was devastating to us and to him because it would literally put him in the same grade as his sister, and which would have just been demoralizing to him. And so I can't imagine. These kids are already struggling, and I think about my son and how he works hard, and so I can't imagine what retention would do to their drive.
You know, you can say social promotion. I'm sure it's happened in certain cases. Other school districts. I'm not worried about other school districts. I'm worried about Hawkins County schools and the Hawkins County students and what's best for them. But yes, I've been contacted by parents that their children have been recommended for retention by our staff based on the data and at the level the student was functioning at that time. So we do, I think, what we're supposed to do for the betterment of the student. Student wound up being retained. Mom and Dad came to terms with it, understood it, and realized it was the best thing for the child. But that decision was made at the school level. It wasn't mandated by the state, but that was made at the school level. Now I'm going to leave it at that. It's getting late. We do have this resolution, so it is up before this board to what you want to do. Now, there's places for board members to sign this, but I feel like we need, and I'll leave it up to you guys. If you want to have a vote, or if you just want to send this and sign it, or not sign it, and if we get more signatures than not, we'll send it to the state legislature.
Well, I don't think any of us are gonna have a problem signing it, tonight or next week or whenever, but one thing that I think that we have to remind the public, I always think about what, is us signing it does nothing. And make sure the public understands that this is just, us opposing what state legislators are doing, and us signing it technically does nothing. I face that a lot on the commission, well, y'all signed into this. Well, that's for Valley Health, for example, we had to sign saying, we oppose this. We didn't stop it.
Right.
And so, with that being said, I hope that, that we do, assume that it will stick. And, one thing that I hope we as a board continue to support financially, is summer school. Mm-hmm. And hope and encourage, and whatever we need to do funding wise to get, I just can't, I never went to summer school and thought sending my kids to summer school was going to be horrifying for them. But it ended up being one of the best decisions that I made as a parent. And my kids love it, and I already asked them if they can go to summer school again. But,
Get around school.
so I just hope that we as a board assume that it sticks and plan that, hope that it doesn't, but assume that it does, and do what we need to do to fund our summer school programs.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is, you don't want to, you'd rather not vote, you just will pass it around, or you want to vote on it? I make the motion that we approve this resolution to send on to the General Assembly. That's my motion. Got a second? Elena got it.
Can I say one additional thing? Sorry to
Yeah,
drag it.
because we're in discussion.
We need multiple measures to consider growth of a student. We're only delegated, we're only using one, and it's not a reading diagnostic test. I already said that earlier, but my second point was that we're looking at students that are approaching grade level, no matter what growth they've made throughout the year, and those that are below grade level on this test. That's why there's 250 students that could potentially qualify from Hawkins. We're not talking about those that are significantly behind only. We're talking about those that are making growth throughout the year, and those that happen to be behind at the end of the year. So that's another issue we have with it. It's not, when you talk retention in kindergarten and first grade, there have to be significant areas that are being deficient, or that are problematic, and that you believe retention would help identify. We're not even given that choice with students that may have grown a year or two's worth of grade level by the time they take this test, still qualifying for retention as measured on the TCAP. That's a big issue for us. So it's not an accountability issue. We will hold students accountable. Our disagreement with the law is not the accountability side, it's how that accountability is measured and taken out of our hands and out of the parents' hands. So I just wanted to clear that up.
Simplification of education. Simplification of education. I'll be taking that up over the next few months. Any further discussion? We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, the motion passes.